Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for everybody who's stayed back for this panel. Trust me, you're going to enjoy what we have to talk today. I've really never thought of sustainability and innovation as a key factor in growing a brand to the next level until I met these gentlemen a few days back. And we've had such amazing conversations around this topic of today. How can we use sustainability and innovation as a tool to grow brands, not just post-pandemic, but just generally across the years? Is it something that we can afford to put into our business models? Is it a luxury or is it a necessity today? And I've got beside me Jamil from Al Bayader, one of the oldest companies in the country that has been developing packaging solutions for our industry for so many years. Beside him is Omar, the founder of Boca, Chief Sustainability Officer, and as well as the award winner of the first Gomio Award for Sustainable Kitchen last year. We've got Andres from Pickle. I think that's a brand that nobody has to be told. It's been storming so many areas on not just about a burger, but how a brand can communicate fun and excitement through a food product. And we've got Shoaib Tandon from Domino's, pizzas that we've grown up with and are still so relevant today. The interesting thing about this panel is that we've got somebody here who does packaging solutions for our industry for a living. We've got two people sitting there who are perhaps the biggest consumers of packaging, and we've got Omar from the whole different sector of fine dine, where his brand is about using local produce and keeping it sustainable. So my first question today to Jamil. When we were talking earlier, Jamil, what struck me was that you were so truly passionate about sustainability, and you spoke about how Al Bayader has been strategically planning, building products for our industry to help consumers as well as companies make decisions over years that can help them not just meet the bottom line, because honestly, as a consultant myself, as an operator, I make decisions based on the bottom line. I teach my clients to make decisions keeping the bottom line in mind. And we got very, very tight margins in our industry. And there you were talking to me and convincing me that there are ways. In fact, there is no choice. This is the only way to go, because not only is it good for everybody in the long run, not only is the Gen Z buying into brands that will be sustainable, but also there are ways that we can make it affordable. So that's my question to you. How do you make recyclable, biodegradable, all these big words we think of that are only for big brands to afford, how do you make those kind of products relevant as well as affordable for anybody, any company sitting here looking at packaging solutions? How will they choose to balance sustainability and affordability?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the way we look at it is really that there's a sustainability transformation that has to go, and every brand today has to at some point undergo this transformation in sustainability for the growth of the brand and also for the longevity of the brand. So the way that we look at it is we go to our clients, and we have a wide range of clients and a wide range of channels as well that we cater to. And we have a lot of discussions with them at the moment on how can we help you through your sustainability transformation. A lot of the conversations there then go into how do you guys want to market your brand? How do you see the future of your brand? And more importantly, as you mentioned, which audience do you want to target? We've had a lot of discussions with brands who are seeking to acquire a younger target audience, a younger clientele. And as we discussed and as you mentioned, there's a lot of demand from the youth and also the teenagers today who in the next 10 years will be the early consumers who will not consume anything if not sustainable or what they think is sustainable. So every single brand has to go through this transformation. And we see it as no choice. And I think many of us would agree here that yes, this transformation has to happen. The question then is, how do we go about this transformation? So at Al Bayadr, what we've done over the last couple of years is we've developed a very wide range of products that cater to the different types of transformation a customer would like to do. There are, of course, sustainable items, the materials themselves, we try to make them as commercially viable as possible. They are, of course, more expensive in most cases, but in some cases, you'd be surprised, they're pretty affordable. And the conversations with the brands is no longer on the commercial, but more on convincing them, you guys have to do the transformation. Because it is a big transformation, even if it's affordable. So yes, we do have ranges, and I invite you all to come to our booth right outside, and I've spoken to many of you here today, on the different ranges that we have that cater to the different sustainability messaging that you would like to go through. So we're big on recycling. We use a lot of recycled PET. We work with a lot of the recyclers in here. We work in the UAE. We work a lot with the governments to incentivize and to push more for the availability of these RPET materials. We work a lot on biodegradability in order to not contaminate landfills. We work a lot on compostability in order to be able to get compost in the end of life of the material. We work a lot also on bio-based material, which can significantly impact your carbon footprint. Actually, you can decrease your carbon footprint of the materials by 75% approximately just with bio-based. So we have a wide range of portfolio of products, all targeted to how you, our customer, the client, would like to message. And that is where most of the conversation happens. We also discussed about some of the successful projects, and it's quite fitting that I came on right after Barakat. Barakat's last video was about the biodegradable packaging. They came to us early this year. Yeah, it's been a long year. Early this year, and we've developed this packaging for them, and we're the ones supplying them with these bottles. So they clearly came to us with the targeted messaging that we want biodegradable, so that we can message that out for our customers, because that is what our customers want. So the successful projects are the projects that we work on directly with either a sustainability team in the brand or with the marketing, who are very clear on how they want to move forward. Today we're in talks with all the big brands, and like I said, I invite anyone to come and discuss with us. Many of you here are already our clients, and we are having these conversations. The transformation is a must, and we have the solutions for you to be able to transform in whatever way you would like to see. There's the quick, the long term, and the even longer term, but it is a must, and I think that's a conversation happening.
Yeah, and that's really, really encouraging to hear that people can find and can enter into a certain area, start there, at least learn, at least get excited about the aspect of how can we transition. And I know, I have a teenage son, and I know the new generation has these X-ray vision. They look at things so differently from the way our generation looked at it. And part of good business strategy and sustainability is also being ready for what's coming through, right? And talking about the next generation and packaging, Pickle is such a brand that targets, and you've got the heart of almost every generation, but especially the younger ones. Do you agree, and do you actually at Pickle plan or strategize your packaging? Because I know you guys consume a lot of packaging. Can you tell me more about how Pickle looks at sustainability from both the consumption, the amount of packaging? How do you plan your deliveries? How do you plan your operational strategies behind reduction of consumption, as well as do you think it's something that is part of your bigger picture, sustainability, recyclable, biodegradable? Are you using it? Are you thinking of using it in the future?
Well, yes. I mean, I will start with saying two things to your point of your son. The data in developed countries indicates that about 16% of clients, primarily some of the Gen Z clientele, is making decisions in terms of where they go to eat based on sustainability and environmental awareness. Now, one of the takings from our meetings prior to the panel today was that in the UAE, as you mentioned, Jamil, probably about 90% of waste is making it to landfill. So with that in mind, we have made a conscious approach to stay away from single-use plastics, to go for the biodegradable options, should this be paper, carton, and any of you who have ordered the brand has come across any of the packaging would see that we stay as much as we possibly can away from plastic. This is something that has been embedded in the brand from its conception. I think the DNA, the founder, the management, it's very much environmentally awake and makes conscious efforts to trying to tackle this, because at the end of the day, there has to be intent. One of your major coups, let's say, apart from using biodegradable materials and staying away from plastic, is to try and find SKUs. A great example is water, one of our key line items, right? Everybody here in the region sells hundreds of thousands of bottles on a regular basis, and we have gone with options that are using bioplastics that you know, they degrade in the landfill after 80 days rather than 400 days. So I think what we can say in general is we put the brand in the context of where we are. We talked about other markets like Germany, Switzerland, where segregation of waste is so much more developed. And here we're trying to put it to good use in the context of the UAE.
We spoke about the recycling and plastic being one of the best or easiest ones to recycle. I'm not a whiz at that, but you are. So what did you mean by that, Jamil, when earlier you were saying that plastic actually is something that can get recycled the best way?
We speak of recycling of plastics. I mean, almost all plastics that we have in the market today is physically recyclable, as in if it is collected, it can be recycled. There's a small range of plastics that are not recyclable, but they are very seldom in food packaging. So the main issue here is not the material itself, but it's rather the disposal of the material. If we are able to collect all of the plastics, or most of the plastics, let's say, then we can reuse them and recycle them into our processes, into our factories. Our factories can have accommodated for a lot of recycled materials. And we work with a lot of the recyclers here to do so. You know, we were also talking in Germany, for instance, they have a deposit scheme for their bottles. 95% of water bottles in Germany, actually, sorry, all bottles, juice bottles, soda bottles, water bottles, 95% of them get recycled because there's a deposit scheme to return back the plastics. And today in Germany, a lot of plastics are being used in the market, but they're not worried about that because a lot of it is being recycled. So that's what we mean by everything is almost everything is recyclable. What we need to work on is less on the material when we talk about recyclability and more on the infrastructure and the policies, as well as we're working with some retailers on doing closed loop systems. We're going to be announcing a very exciting partnership in Gulf Food, which I can't really announce now, but I'd be glad to discuss that there. So that's what we mean. It is really all about the infrastructure and policies necessary. On the material side, we have developed some materials that are biodegradable and compostable. Yes, this is designing specific materials, but all in all, plastics can be recycled, and the best end-of-life option for any material is to recycle it.
Give it back, right? Back to where it came.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Omar, earlier when we were talking about you being born and brought up here and how you believe that we can use local produce, we can grow and use locally grown produce in our restaurants. And you've made such a great example of it. I mean, it's not easy in DIFC with all the competition that you've got to actually aim for sustainability awards, to actually go off the trodden path and do things that you believe and you have passion for and then make a success out of it. I'd love to hear more about what led you to think of a sustainable kitchen as something that DIFC and the people of Dubai were looking for. And how has it been for you guys? How did you get that award from Gomio, and how do you intend to retain that? And how have your consumers responded to that initiative?
No, you're You're absolutely right. We're lucky to live in a city, in a country where we have access to produce flown from all over the world, regardless of season. We also have access to some of the best brands in the world. What we wanted to establish early in the day is the fact that we have enough creative people living and working here that we can come up with our own concepts that could rival any international import. So we started looking inwards first and foremost for produce. We started looking at the 1,400 kilometers of coastline that we have access to, overlooking two seas, the Arabian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. We started representing smaller fish variety that don't usually make their way into professional kitchens. We actually took, at the time, what was called the Ministry of Fisheries list, which is a basic list of red, green, and orange fish that is sustainable, that is found in certain seasons. So we started experimenting with that, and that kind of grew on us. And then we got introduced to some of the new local providers. Diba Bay oyster obviously comes to mind. That became the only oyster that we served. We started looking inland to agri-tech producers, traditional farmers, organic farmers. So that obviously grew on us. We then started understanding our role, the role that we play within the food industry, and that us as restaurants, we buy a plethora of products, and we consume and we produce a lot of waste ourselves. And I wanted to understand to a more accurate degree what was that waste, what does that waste look like? And that's when we formalized a role within the restaurant, a waste officer, that would not just segregate waste by the 7 categories that we have, but also measure every item before it leaves the restaurant. And that gave us data. We have now more than 3 years worth of data. And with this data, we were able to have new conversations internally with the different production areas of the restaurant. So we're able to talk to the kitchen team, to the bar team, to the floor team, and show them what kind of waste they've been producing over the last month. And obviously incentivize them and involve them in creating new recipes using some of these ingredients that are considered waste, or perhaps repurposing them within the restaurant. It also allowed us to have new conversations with our suppliers. So our highest category by waste, by weight, was glass, and we started having new conversation with our providers on what to do with that. It led us later on to wanting to understand to a larger degree the impact of everything that we've been doing within the restaurant on the environment. And that's when we hired a third-party consultant to help us understand our carbon emissions to a very accurate degree. So we came up with our first report, our first carbon emissions report, and that details our production and operation life cycles. So not just obviously the energy that we're consuming, so this considers scope 1 and scope 2, but then scope 3, which talks about every product that we buy, down to the peppercorn, where we buy it from, our commute as employees of the restaurant, how do we arrive at the restaurant every day, and obviously waste, and we had that waste data. So that allowed us again to have new conversations. So although the biggest category of waste by weight was glass, but in terms of carbon emissions and impact, it was used cooking oil. And there's such an easy solution to turn that into a circular economy and put it back into the economy used as biodiesel, collected and transformed here locally. So that's been our journey so far, and I totally agree with Jamil that it is a journey. You'll have to start somewhere. Our approach has been looking internally, looking at ourselves, looking at our value chain, and what can we influence and what can we change that's obviously within our power. There are a lot of easy, low-hanging fruits that any restaurant can actually go through.
I so agree with you. There were a few things you said, like incentivizing your people, motivating, coming up with the why to the what behind what we do. And the advantage you 3 gentlemen have is that your companies are homegrown brands, aren't they? All 3. Whereas Shoaib represents an American brand that has a head office, I'm sure, and systems and procedures. Great ones. Honestly, the Americans do it the best in that way until now. But my question more is, how do you, representing such a large brand with so many restrictions, how do you localize these decisions? how do you look at the UAE at its current level of where we are at right now? I would say we're such an emerging market. Everybody's looking at us right now, Dubai, but we're just being seen, whereas this country, America, has been doing it for years, and they have their own ways of doing things. How do you, representing this country and our consumers, convince the master franchisors, the head office, to come up with sustainability and innovation in these areas that might not even be on their agenda, or maybe it is on their agenda, but in a different way?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I'll take a step back and, I'll just, because there's a lot of discussion that happens whenever that there is a discussion on sustainability. It is about commercial versus sustainability, what is the impact on the P&L, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just ask all of us to just reflect back and think about it. Does the customer really care about your profitability? The customer does not. The customer cares about a great product at a great value, great price, and what are you as a brand doing for the community, and what is your commitment towards sustainability? That's what the customer cares for. So therefore, it is not a good to-do thing. It is not even a great to-do thing. It is a must-to-do thing. So this is something that is the first filter that you need to cross. Unless that you have crossed that filter, you will always have excuses for not doing it. From our side, as far as our food is concerned, the production is concerned, we do not generate a lot of oil or anything because our product is like that. But what we do generate is a lot of packaging. And that is where the sustainability part comes in more often for us than not. So what we do is that, first of all, most of our suppliers, I would say that 60% of all that we consume is only 2 or 3 products like the core cheese and sauce, and which is all imported. So what we ensure is that our agencies and our partners across the world make sure that everything that gets delivered to us is 100% in a packaging which is completely biodegradable or recyclable. That's number one. Number two is the packaging of our boxes itself, which is one of the largest consumption. And all our boxes are 100% corrugated boxes, which are completely biodegradable. So much so that actually if you'll make those boxes after consuming your pizza moist and put it in a plant, it will actually get soaked into the soil and you can grow plants in it. So this is the second. And the third is that in our commissary, if you are in UAE, you must think about water. So you cannot not think about water if you are here. And this is something that we also make sure that in our commissary where we produce all our dough and everything, we do 100% recycling of all the water that we use for washing and for all that stuff. So this is what our commitment towards sustainability is.
And what about, you talk about water, that's such a big consumption, right? And that's our biggest price point, isn't it, on the menu? Let's be honest about it. But is it really sustainable? We're using these glass bottles, plastic bottles. Is there something else that each one of us can do in our business models to make water more free-flowing, filtered water, tap water? Would that be something that you would consider sustainable for each of your brands?
So for me, they can help better, but so there are 2 parts to the water consumption. So one is in the commissary itself, which we do completely 100% recycling. And when it comes to the drinking water consumption in the store, that is where we are now switching over to the machines, which is the humidifier machines, which converts the humidity in the air into the fresh water, and that is what we are installing in our offices and in our stores. So basically, there is no bottle and there is no plastic. So it is not brought in from anywhere. It is the humidity of the air that gets converted into the distilled water, and that's what we are converting into.
Naeem, is that your way of telling us it's time? No. Thank you for that. And food. So we've been talking about packaging. Well, a lot of waste happens in our kitchens, right at the time of supply chain, how we manage our produce, and after it's prepared, how do we anticipate the right amount of preparation? How do we avoid wastage at post-prep time? Can each one of you, maybe not you so much, Jamil, unless you want to talk about your house, how you do it there, but can we talk more about how kitchens, how businesses are looking at this part. How are they managing their operations, both at supply chain as well as at post-consumption, post-production level?
If I may, obviously sustainability has a lot to do with commerce and business, and actually it has a lot to do with efficiencies. And it is a reflection of how well you know your business, how well you can anticipate your business level throughout the week, how much you anticipate demand, and how much you are prepping for that day, for example. Obviously, there are things that you can go further and do. Something that we've been doing in the restaurant is incentivizing the kitchen team to come up with ingredients that are usually destined to waste. Things like tomato skins or husks of oranges and lemons, pulps of pineapple, short expiry milk. There are a lot of things to extend the shelf life of these products and reuse them, reintegrate them back on the menu with smart communication on our menus. But there's a lot to unpack here in terms of what sustainability means. It really talks about and addresses your business as one of the three key pillars of sustainability. So conservation, community, and commerce. So the business side for sure. And
also using the same ingredients multiple times. That's such a classic thing, and it's such a helpful thing, isn't it? In focused brands like yours, the two of you, you know, Pickle and Domino's, it's a small focused menu, right? You know what you're selling. It's a burger, it's a pizza. Whereas in fine dine, it can have so many layers to it. So how do your chains, your brands, manage your waste?
I mean, to Omar's point, obviously when it comes to QSR, we don't have the culinary flexibility, let's say, to turn waste into new products. You mentioned it correctly. We are dealing with a limited menu, with a very focused type of items. I would agree with Omar. Preparation is key. Having the correct systems to try and forecast the correct amount of preparation. Obviously, that's key. When it comes to food, I think there are other areas of waste that are probably not food related that are also key in terms of the sustainability question. You know, are we wasting energy, for example, which for us, you know, you guys have ovens running constantly. In our case, we have grills, we have fryers. And I think there's a lot that can be done from that side of the business as well. Like I said, you know, from a food perspective, it's very limiting. But when it comes, it's almost like opening a Pandora's box when it comes down to, well, how are we building our restaurants? What materials are we using? Are we making it more energy efficient? And trying to reduce the carbon footprint from that side of things.
I'll just touch on a really important point. So based on the carbon emission calculation that we've done within the restaurant, almost half came from the first two scopes. So scope 1 talks about direct emissions from the restaurant, and that is coming obviously from burning our own gas. But the scope 2 talks about energy and cooling. So if we're able to just generally apply a lot of the basic practices in terms of energy consumption, in terms of switching off the lights when you leave. Obviously, you can't switch off the ACs, but maintaining your equipment, making sure that your equipment are maintained up to level, making sure that the equipment that you buy are actually obviously running at a certain capacity. So there's a lot to do on a very basic level to reduce your impact.
So true, actually, the little things, putting the light off behind you and stuff like that. I think we've got 5 more minutes now. We can either have some questions coming through if somebody has a relevant question that might help you in your brands, in your job, or strategies that you're thinking about right now about sustainability. Or I can ask these gentlemen one final question. Yeah. Absolutely, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. I'm Mohammed Al-Madani from Madani Group of Companies. You touched on, when you talked about the energy and consumption of utilities, you know how it's expensive, the gas and electricity here in Dubai, you know, let alone other companies. So when you said the oven has to be turned on with Domino's, and our grill for our Charlie's Philly steak has to be on at 360 degrees Celsius. And our fryers to make the fries has to be 165 degrees Celsius. So those temperatures to be maintained, you have to continuously keep your energy or keep your, on sustainability, you have any ideas or any innovative way how to turn it on and off or reduce the, you know, the bills for the energy, for the utilities? I'll be really happy to learn from you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to take that, Jamil? Your
Well, there are obviously, thank you, Mohammed. There are obviously the basic practices within any business in terms of switching off the lights, switching off the non-essentials when the restaurant is not operational, maintaining the equipment up to that certain level, so exactly the same things. But there are obviously certain requirements of the business that you cannot do without. You'll have to maintain that oil on a certain temperature. You'll have to keep the fridges on. You'll have to keep the freezers on. Perhaps looking at the type of equipment, if it makes sense for an upfront asset investment into much more efficient equipment that could help you on the long run. This is obviously a decision that you'll have to make within your different properties.
I can just add another very important point is that many of times what we ignore is during the project and building up the store, the whole air circulation and the exhaust. This is something so damn important. I mean, a little bit of an extra investment during the build-up of the store will save you the utility over a long period of time, because just that circulation, we have seen that, you know, it can actually take down the required consumption by 6 kilowatt, and that's what we have seen. I mean, this is huge. We had to do it because we found certain stores where the that required kilowatt was not available, and then we started to build on it and try to understand how can we have a better you know, air circulation system, and that saves us a lot. So this is also something that you can, you know, think about while building up the store itself.
Any other questions?
Hi. You guys tackled very important and critical matters in the current F&B industry. But I have one comment, and I'm talking about, like, let's say from a consumer perspective. Current sustainable products, right, or biodegradable products such as, for example, currently paper straws. Paper straw, maybe it's a personal opinion, it's not that practical for me, right? So, in your opinion, where do you think we will meet that point of that equilibrium between, let's say, practicality and sustainability, and instead of just focusing on sustainability?
Yes, we were talking about this earlier. Jamil's got a great answer.
That's a really good question, and that's a question that we are asked very frequently by our clients. You know, in everything that we design, materials and products, we are very, very cautious to make sure that we're not giving up functionality for sustainability. Because there are solutions out there that do balance both functionality and sustainability. So we're very, very cautious about that and ensure that the products that we design really do maintain the functionality. So for instance, we're showcasing a straw out there, our Gaia straw. It's developed from a very specific and honestly cool material. It's a biocomposite made out of wood chips and bioplastics. And those are, in fact, more sustainable, you can argue. Again, it depends on how you measure sustainability, but it's more sustainable than paper straws in that there are no plastic linings and so on. It doesn't get soggy. It lasts for a long time. There's no paper taste. It's marine degradable. It's landfill degradable. It's compostable. It ticks all the boxes, and it's actually very commercially accessible. So it is a big chunk into how we design the products. We need to look at aspects of, yes, you're absolutely right. We should no longer look at sustainability in the sense of, we'll make it more sustainable and make it less functional. So it's a very good point, and we do keep that in our product development.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. Thank you very much, everybody. We have run out of time, before Naeem physically removes us from the stage, we will say, have a great evening. Thank you very much for coming.